This is the I Read Comic Books podcast, and I'm your host, Tia, for episode 3 of our special bonus miniseries, This Is Not an Interview. Today I am not interviewing Christopher Sebela, writer of basically all the things. I honestly don't know how I even managed to get an hour out of him today. He writes Cold War, Heartthrob, Welcome Back, Short Order Crooks, Death Defying. He's got a couple cool ones coming up. Shanghai Red, Crowded. We're going to talk about these and a lot more. Hi, Chris. Is it okay if I call you Chris?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, cool. I don't know. Christopher is a lot of syllables, but...
Yeah, that just goes on my the titles of my books. That's the only time I expect anyone to use that. So.
Okay, cool. Well... So I'm just going to say right off the bat, one of my favorite things about following you on Twitter is the dogs of Portland.
It's it's become a thing because I'm not allowed to have a dog. So this is how I get my dog fix. Is I just creep on other people's dogs. I've set up all these rules. Like I can't pet the dog. I can't ask to take a photo of the dog. It all has to be hush hush and.
Is your rule for not petting the dog because you're going to form an attachment that'll be too difficult for you to break at some point when the dog has to leave?
No, mostly I just I respect other people's dogs, and you don't some people get uptight about you touching their dog, and some people keep vicious animals and then they just bring them outside for some reason. So for my safety and the dog safety, sure. I keep my distance. It gives me my objectivity, so I can post their photos on Twitter.
One of these days, you'll have to put together a Clown Motel style zine of all your.
I have
of your dogs.
Yeah, I have I got to expand on it, but I have a 60-page zine that I made.
I want.
I'll send you a copy. It's on my. I sell it on my store. It was it's. All the weird zine things I do, I call them part of my Dumbstronaut series. It's like Dumb Astronaut. And so there was Clown Motel, then there was Pool Disaster, and I was trying to figure out a new one. And I was just fuck it, just coffee shop dogs. I have all these photos. So yeah, I have 60 pages, and it's a small manga size. So you can tuck it in your pocket and take it with you.
Nice.
Yeah.
I feel you got to put that front and center at the conventions. I don't know how I missed that.
Yeah, it's a hard sell because people will pick it up and look at it and go oh, dogs, and then they'll put it down because it's oh, cool, I saw some dogs. Now, I'm going to move on.
People, listen, these are quality dogs. You're missing out.
It's true.
The Pool Disaster, that's also... that's a saga for the ages.
Yeah, it's finally over. Well, sort of over. It continues to keep going, but the pool is no longer there, but my mom's neighbors are. So they just appeared on the news most recently.
Oh, good.
My mom just texted me and sent me, she emailed me and sent me a link, and it was to a local news story about this dude and how everybody now the police are forcing him to clean up all his trash. And I wrote my mom back. I was wow, you can see your porch in that. So it keeps going on, but now he's just a weird junk hoarder, and that's not as exciting.
No, that's sort of sad.
Yeah.
What does your mom think about the saga being made into a zine?
Oh, she doesn't like it at all.
Really?
Yeah, she made me stop selling it because she's convinced that he will somehow find out about it and then will sue me, which is I don't think that's true. One, I think it'd be really hard for him to find out about it because the path he would have to take to find a zine that some dude in Portland is making,
right,
is a pretty crooked one. And then what's he gonna sue me for? Documenting what he actually did. And I tried to explain it to my mom, and she was listen, I don't ask you for anything. And I was that's fair. I thought she would be proud to be my co-author on that book,
right.
But No. So I got her to promise that, like, if he moves away or if he goes to jail, that I could put it back out. So
it's like a collector's item.
Yeah, I'm going to try and put together, probably closer to the end of the year, I'm going to try and do like a comprehensive one. And I'm just going to like change the city name, and I'll put like blocks over the dude's eyes. Like anytime you could see somebody's face. Mm-hmm. I'll just cover my bases to make sure that I don't get sued. Yeah, and I'll take my mom's name out of it. I'll just list her as my mom, and possibly put it out under a pseudonym. Like, just to cover all the bases, like, nobody can be sued by over this now.
Does your mom in general follow like the Clown Motel, or is she a big fan of your books, like your books that you are putting out now?
No. No, my mom told me, like, she's like, yeah, I don't read comics. And I was like, that's fine. She read High Crimes and she really liked that. And I think I've got her interested to read Crowded. Mm-hmm. But no, like, the Clown Motel thing, like, I didn't even tell her about it until I was actually in the Clown Motel, and I called her. And I was like, oh, FYI, I'm staying here for a month. And yeah, like, but then I told her, I was like, yeah, I raised $10,000 to come stay out here. And she's like, oh, okay. Like, it's stupid, but like, you're not, at least you're making some money off of it. So, and she got like excited when I told her we got nominated for Eisners. Right. But then I had to explain what Eisners were. So no, I mean, I try to pick there are certain things that happen in my career that I'm definitely like, okay, I could tell my mom about this and it'll make her feel like, oh, okay, he's still doing okay. Like, she doesn't have to worry about me. Aww. So I think that's what it all comes down to. Is she's just like, what are you doing with yourself? Like, which is natural. I would be concerned.
You have so many books, though. I feel like you're very busy.
Yeah. But she just like, she doesn't.
Mom stuff.
Yeah, if they were real books, if they were prose books, like, she would be much prouder because she actually reads prose. So I don't blame her. Like, she grew up, or she raised me as a comics nerd and had to deal with all that crap. So the last thing she wants to do as a much older person is like deal with it all again. So
and just, I guess, we're recording this the day before Mother's Day. This is going to come out probably at the end of May, but we're recording this the day before Mother's Day. So I don't know, all this mom stuff. I actually want to do an episode of our regular show, which is kind of like, it's almost like panel topics that we do every week. And I really want to do like a how to get your mom into comics topic. And because, my mom, she read comics when she was a kid, and then she stopped for a long time, and she actually got a Bitch Planet tattoo with me. Like, she's into comics now. So, I feel like I could speak to getting moms back into comics as someone who did.
Yeah, I support that. I don't know how to do it. Like, I've definitely, like I suggested my book Heartthrob to her. I was like, it takes place, in the late 70s and blah, blah. And she was like, no, that sounds good. So, I mean, yeah, I'm just, I figure she might get around to, she's retired now, so it's very possible that, like, she'll read some of them. I mean, I ended up, like, I keep sending her stuff, so she's got it, but on the, she also has a lot of TV shows to watch, though, so I don't think she's going to, like, run out of those anytime soon, so.
I mean, I don't know if there's anything you could talk about, but Heartthrob got optioned for a TV show, right?
Mm-hmm. No, she was super into that.
That's a big deal.
Yeah. So, I mean, those are the things that, like, I kind of, I like to, like, tell my mom about, because, like, then it makes her feel like, oh, okay, like, I mean, because when I first told her, like, hey, I'm going to start, like, pursuing writing comics for a living, like, she probably thought that, like, oh, crap, like,
just moving back home.
yeah, because I had just moved to Portland, and so like already I was like moving across the country, and then I tell her like, oh yeah, I'm gonna like pursue writing comics. So she's like, oh yeah, this is not good. Like now I just kind of look for things that I can feed her to like be like, hey, like this was actually the best decision I ever made. Like, and here's why.
Yeah. I feel like, God, this has become like Freudian analysis hour with Tia. Tell me about your mom. Okay, so mom stuff aside.
Yes.
Crowded sounds amazing.
Yeah, I'm super excited about that.
Can you tell us kind of the elevator pitch for Crowded? Because I want to talk about it a little, but I don't know what we're like you want to talk about.
Well, it's a book that I call it 10 minutes in the future. Takes place 10 minutes in the future in an America where there is a crowdfunding platform for assassinations, and so you can basically open a campaign on anybody, and as long as someone else backs it, then anyone out there can decide like, oh, I could use $500 and go track this person down, kill them, and collect the money that's been raised. So that's our setup, and our story is about a woman, Charlie, who wakes up one morning and suddenly has a $1.25 million campaign that's barely a day old, and she has no idea why. Like thousands of people are backing it, and
wow.
So everybody's trying to kill her, and she hires our other main character, Vita, from this Uber for bodyguards app called Defend. So yeah, it basically becomes like Vita trying to keep Charlie alive while they're trying to figure out why everybody wants Charlie dead.
So for the parameters of like the rules of the universe, did you just decide that it's legal to murder people?
In this case, yeah. I mean, like, there's a certain point where I had to just be like, well, you have to accept this if you're going to read this book.
Right.
And I'm not going to turn it into, I'm not going to turn it into like the Star Wars trilogy where they just talk about trade routes and stuff. So I try to cover some ground as to why it's legal. I mean, mostly it's legal because they couldn't stop it. So now they basically bureaucratize it to death. So if you go out and like collect a campaign on somebody, you have to fill out like mountains of paperwork to submit to the police. And, if you screw up one thing on it, you're basically handing them a signed confession. And
right.
If you screw up one thing on it, then you get dragged through the ringer. So, then any money you might have raised now goes to your defense. And so there are rules to sort of regulate why everybody in the world isn't doing it. But at the end of the day, I was just like, well, it's the toothpaste is out of the tube. I mean, it's the same, it's like downloading music.
Right.
Like that, as soon as somebody figured out how to put that out there in the world, it was over. Like,
I feel like this concept would have some really interesting implications for suicidal people.
Yeah.
Just put a hit on yourself.
Yeah.
Not have to worry about doing it yourself. Sorry, I'm going to get really dark here. I don't know why I just thought of that. It's fine. Mom, don't listen. My mom listens to the show. I'm not suicidal. It's fine.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's all sorts of, one of the big things that kind of was the inspiration for this was like the idea of this thing, not so much the actual mechanics of it, but like the idea of it becomes this looming threat. So suddenly, like on the downside, you have people running around murdering each other all the time. On the upside, like so many people in power are terrified of this thing.
Oh, interesting.
That they don't want a campaign opened on them, so they actually begin to like your representative actually represents you. And
look at you using your like powers for good, and I'm over here like, how can I commit suicide with this?
Yeah, I mean, that's where it initially came from, was like the idea of like, just like if 100,000 people all threw money in, like, all threw in $5 or something or more, like they could fund somebody, that's enough money for somebody to go and try and do something really insane. And, it sort of excuses you morally because, you're like, well, I didn't give $1,000. Right. I only gave $5.
You can
like
kind of dilute the moral dilemma.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, yeah, but these other, 999,000 people gave too. Like, so it's not all my fault. So it becomes a way of like sort of dispensing, quote unquote justice, but without having any of that inconvenient, like moral, conscience stuff bothering you at the end of it.
On the topic of using your power for good, you have solicited backup stories from up-and-coming creators, and so you're going to dedicate some space in the issues to just giving people kind of a platform to put their stories out there. How has that been going, getting like kind of sorting through all of that?
Luckily, a friend of mine, she offered her assistance to like organize everything, so she's been doing an amazing job. I think we have right now we have 35 official submissions that we have logged in. There's probably about 20 more. Wow. And there's at least like 20 plus people who have emailed in the time since that we need to email. So there's a ton of them. So right now it's like we're just trying to get everything in order so we can start reading over the pitches and everything. It's a lot of work, like not my smartest idea, but luckily I'm not doing a lot of the work. So really it just comes down to reading these pitches and deciding what, which one we think would be cool as a backup.
Yeah. I mean, so as an aspiring creator, what does that mean for someone's career or self-esteem or just kind of encouragement to, I mean, like when you were maybe in that stage in your career, were you thinking back to like, if someone had given me this opportunity, that really could have given me a boost kind of?
Yeah. I mean, I it was a very specific example that, it was in 2012. I had like just done Emerald City and it was a disaster for me. Like I was walking around with like my trades of Screamland, my first book, and giving them to editors, and like nobody cared, and I was just having a bad time, and I had nothing else. I had stuff lined up, but it was so far down the road that I was like, well, I don't know when maybe I'm not going to break into comics. So after that, my buddy Joe Keating and I went out, and he was just starting up a book at Image called Hell Yeah. And he was like, I was thinking about doing backups in this. So like, if you wanted to do like a 12-page story and we just run it in like 3 parts. And I was like, yeah, that'd be amazing. And like race to go like find an artist and get started on it. And it, like that, it never came out. I think the book actually stopped coming out, but also we never finished our part of it. So, it never came to fruition, but just like the fact of like having that as a motivator for me was really huge. And that, somebody was, like giving me that shot. Like, so I feel like Crowded is a book that's going to do pretty well. And I'd like to extend that platform to other people. I mean, especially people who just like you normally don't read stuff from in comics.
Honestly, I think the way that I discover new things to read at this point is I guess tacit recommendations from creators I already trust. Like anthologies that people put together, or people who will be a guest artist on an an issue of a book that I already read or backup, things like that. I do think that a lot of creators have like a brand almost, or like you kind of just know like, oh, we kind of have the same taste, or I trust this person. So if you're saying that it's good, I'm going to check it out. So it's,
right.
You know, that's a good way, I think, to discover new things and to get your work out there if you're a creator.
Yeah. And I think for a creator, like just being able to say like, hey, like I have a backup out, you know, from Image Comics today.
Yeah.
Is just like, you know, amongst your circle, like that's a big thing. So I just wanted to give somebody that thing that like I was offered. And hopefully like we can actually take it all the way to completion. But yeah, I mean, I feel like so much of, you know, comics is such a small industry and everybody knows everybody. And there is a tendency of like, and I get it, I've felt it myself of like, you know, once you get in there, it's like, well, I'm in, like, see ya, everybody else. And, you know, I feel that constantly, like that sort of worry, but, you know, it's at the end of the day, I wouldn't be in comics without people helping me. And if this is like the least I can do to like give a voice to people who are out there struggling and wondering if this is something they even want to do, like that's, I don't know, like it wouldn't, I'm trying to like, at least in my own little backyard, trying to build a better industry. So, that feels like a good way to do it, to devote some of our space to creators who otherwise wouldn't get a space.
Well, I am very, I'm looking forward to see what ends up in the backup stories with that.
Me too.
Your other book that's coming out, I think in the end of June, Shanghai Red, right? End of June, yeah.
June 20th.
June 20th. This book looks so, it's set in the 19th century, right? And
yeah, in the like mid 1890s.
Okay. I hope I don't get your pitch wrong. So it's about a woman who is like going back to Portland to seek revenge on these people who had set her on this course. That can you elaborate on my terrible summation of your pitch? Yeah,
I mean, there's the term Shanghaiing now, you know, means to like take over something, but like Shanghaiing used to be a practice where sailors would get either like tricked or physically dragged onto boats and have their signatures forged. And then, you know, like they'd wake up and they're in the, you know, heading out to sea. And the way the laws were was like, you could do anything to a sailor that was on your boat, but a sailor could never like leave in the middle of their contract. That was like, they'd immediately get thrown into prison. So like our story is about this woman who ends up getting shanghaied and who has basically spent 2 years on this boat hiding as a man because she's been living her life sort of dressing up as a man in order to get the kind of work she thinks she deserves, which elevates her and makes her happier, but then by the same token also sets her up to get shanghaied.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, our book opens with her basically like going after all the sailors on the boat and then turning the boat around and heading back to Portland to track down every person who is responsible for putting her on that boat, and also to, you know, get back to her family who is still back there and who have no idea what happened to her. So it's, I mean, it feels like it might be my most serious book to this point. Like it's very, I don't know. It's not like any other book I've done. It's also like very violent, because it's a revenge book at its heart. But, you know, we also wanted it to make it about more than that. So, I mean, it's also about like families and especially about identity, with Red trying to, you know, deal with these sort of two sides of herself, because like, you know, the whole like male side of herself like becomes a thing that she is both like she really likes, but is also like has a lot of blame for it, for her being where she is now. So
yeah,
it's a lot of like, it's hard to sum up, basically.
Is that, I mean, gender identity in the late 19th century, obviously people didn't have the same language and scripts and sort of ideas about it as we do now. But obviously, you know, trans people and genderqueer people, and like they existed, if they didn't have the same words for it. So are you going to look at any of that in the book as things progress? Because it sounds like that's kind of a part of her identity that's going to be really in the forefront.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely deal with it. You know, a lot of it is about gender identity and, you know, sort of figuring out that stuff. You know, I am not a trans person, so I did not want to do a book about a trans person. Like, that certainly can be taken from this, like, but I didn't want to make it explicit. I mean, a lot of this was derived basically from my own stuff of, like, you know, trying to figure out where I fit on the spectrum and, you know, sort of having that questioning. And it felt like this was a good way to kind of explore that. But yeah, I mean, we deal with it, but it's very much like, it's not a book about, you know, like the gender identity thing is not like, that's not like our hook.
Right.
It's hard to talk about because I don't want it to seem like, you know, that I'm like using this as a story engine and that's it. You know, I'm not like, I just don't want it to sound cheap or anything, or come across as cheap. You know, I've had, you know, I have sensitivity readers who read over the issues and let me know if I am screwing stuff up, like people who are at different parts on the gender spectrum. So my whole goal is to like tell a story that resonates with me, but can also resonate with other people, but also isn't like me just making blind assumptions about shit. Because I feel like that's where, you know, I see so many writers, or not so many, but I see some writers complaining like, oh, so I can't write about this now because I'm a white. And it's like, no, dude, that's not what they're saying. Like, you can write about this, but one, be prepared to get called on your shit when you mess it up. And two, be prepared to like do the work and make it mean something. Like this, you know, somebody's life isn't like your fictional hook that you're just going to like use and then walk away from.
Yeah, I was at Emerald City Comic Con. I was on a panel about like representation and diversity and how to do it well, and there were a lot of questions like that where it was like, can I just not write outside of my identity? And you know, obviously that's terrible to be that limited and to say that it's almost like saying you can only care about stories that are within your identity, which is just the opposite of what is the whole point of all of this.
Right.
But it sounds like what you're doing here is telling a story that has a lot of different aspects to it, and this is one of them. And if you had ignored that aspect, it would be as bad as if you had made it the entire focus. Yeah.
I mean, you know, at the end of the day, our story is about our main character, Red, and sort of, you know, but I feel like my main job is to bring my characters to life, for myself, to where they are like actual people, and it makes the writing easier as you go, because then you basically like they tell you what they're supposed to be doing in reaction to this situation or that, like it. But yeah, I mean, we're just dealing with you know, many different aspects of this character, you know, and it's not like it's a, you know, we basically reveal that she's hiding as a man on page 5 of the first issue. So it's not like, but it doesn't become like, you know, then the next 20 pages aren't like the other people on the ship grilling her about it. Like,
Right.
Because it's a time where like that stuff is just like so not understood. I don't know. Like it's a book that like I've felt a lot of trepidation about. And I could see how it might go wrong if I screwed up. But I'm also I'm willing to admit if I did screw up, and if somebody is offended by something I did, and to be better about it, which I feel is like better than half of the screw ups that happen.
Yeah.
In comics or anywhere, like, like if trying to find a true apology from somebody is like, trying to find water in the desert. So if I do screw up, then like I will own it and I will fix it going forward. But yeah, the main reason I write is to write about people who aren't me.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like you have a lot of stories about women or with women protagonists, and I don't get the sense that you are treating them as objects in some sort of weird power fantasy, which that can happen a lot with women characters.
Sure, sure. For me, it's that like I grew up my whole life with white dude stories. Like I've had my fill, and the last thing I want to do is like throw more onto the pile. And I feel like it's a way to really, I don't know, it's like you're coddling yourself. It's like you refuse to sort of step outside the comfortability of your existence and to try and understand how another person might think and feel. And,
it's also like, I don't know, sometimes I think there are all of these stories and ways of thinking and ways of seeing the world that if you only read stories about white guys, you're not even going to know what you don't know about wide swaths of the world.
Yeah. And, I feel like so much of this sort of like weird racist nexus we're in is that so many people have never had to confront a world where, they aren't the center of it. And I try not to think about myself much at all. Like I'm not my biggest fan, and I've I live with a swirl of like mental issues and self-loathing. So on that one level, it's just easier for me to think outside myself because like that would just drag things down. But also like then it becomes actual fiction. Like it's not just like I'm not like Gary suing myself into the next story that I've come up with.
Right.
And at the end of the day, like, like writing women is like writing men. Like you have to write them well. Like that's my job. So yeah, it's just been like, always felt like the better option for me because I don't want to get lazy and I don't want to be part of the problem. And, especially like doing books like Welcome Back, like getting that kind of reaction from people who were really, really into that book and like, people able to see themselves in something like that is like what do I get out of seeing myself in a story like that? Like nothing. Like it's, I don't know. This all becomes like weird.
There's also something I think so valuable in being able to see yourself in someone who is totally unlike you.
Yeah. I mean, and that's what it is, yeah, I every one of the characters I write, like there are parts of myself in each one of those characters. And it's like, and yeah, it still fits with them, even though they're not me. Like, so I don't know. Everybody, is basically not, I mean, everybody isn't the same, but basically everybody is the same. Like, it's not like, there's some mysterious, like, key you have to unlock. Like, like writing women, writing people of color, like, you're just writing people. Like, you definitely don't want to, like, have a template where it's like, okay, every character is spat out from this machine and, like you want to do the work, and mostly the work involves like talking to people who aren't also like white dudes. So
reading stories by them. Yeah.
Yeah. And just like expanding, your horizons. And, you know, like I feel privileged that I'm able to write for a living, and like the fact that like I can do it that I can get books out there that like, you know, maybe 20 years ago would never exist. I mean, I want to take full advantage of that, you know, and I want to do like stories with queer protagonists and people of color and just basically people who aren't me, because I live with myself all the time and I'm kind of tired of it. So like this fiction is for me. Yeah. I mean, I'm writing for myself as well. Like it's much easier for me to like just sink into that story, and I don't know, it's just much more exciting to be writing somebody who isn't me.
I feel like in most of your books, there's a lot of like, even in books that I would consider Heartthrob to be like a more lighthearted version, but there's like a lot of death and danger in your books.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And everyone experiences death and danger at some point in their lives. That's pretty universal. Something that I noticed, and when you were talking about Shanghai Red, I was like, wow, it's even in these books that are upcoming, like having a body is a problem.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a problem. And I mean, so if you look, it's like in Heartthrob, she has the heart transplant, and Welcome Back, there's the reincarnation. You know, in Cold War, there's like the heads and the, you know, being frozen and coming back. And in Shanghai Red, you know, she's like dealing with these gender issues. In Crowded, you could literally be sniped at any minute and you wouldn't even know it. It's like,
yep.
I don't know. Is this something that you've like worked out as a theme, or is it just kind of coming out?
No. Yeah, I just like, and I noticed like a long time ago that like this was apparently a theme of mine. So I certainly don't try to keep stuff on theme. It's just I don't know. You know, I grew up a dark kid who watched horror movies all the time, and you know, when the internet was invented, then I was like, you know, one of the first people on Rotten.com, like watching the most disgusting crap that they could post on the internet. You know, and like, I guess it's an outlet for me. You know, like I like violent video games too. So, I mean, yeah. And I mean, ultimately, I think death is just like a really interesting subject, because there's, you know, all we know is that it literally happens to everybody, and we have no idea what happens after it. And like, people will try to offer clues, but like nobody has any idea. So it feels like this sort of, you know, you could say whatever you want about it and nobody can come up and say, oh, that's not true. So you could say like, yeah, reincarnation totally exists and there's a secret war going on, and like, prove me wrong. Like, but
I don't know, like being corporeal is literally like day to day my biggest problem.
Yeah, no, I would totally be into like being a brain in a jar.
Or just like a mist, maybe like a mist of some kind would be
sure.
good.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, bodies are a problem, and you know, there's so much about being alive that's a pain in the ass. But yeah,
the worst thing in the world to me is like, this is so dumb. It annoys me that you get hungry and then you eat, and you have to like decide what to eat and get the things and make it and feed yourself and then clean up afterwards, and then you're hungry again like 6 hours later. Like, what is that?
Maybe you should do less.
Like a sloth.
Yeah, like if you ate that food and then just immediately like laid down, it would take you much longer to get hungry. So consider that.
There's just like such, the banality of having a body just is like the heaping insult upon the injury of being alive.
Yeah, no, it all kind of sucks to some degree. You know, having to pay bills and having to, you know, all the garbage that comes with like being alive is like, I mean, I still love it though. Like, it's certainly better than the alternative. So, the death is just like, it feels like an open wall of possibility.
Yeah.
Which is not, I think, how you're supposed to look at it, but I think that having that perspective for me, like, keeps me from freaking out about it. Like,
Yeah.
And I don't really worry about it. Like, I know it's out there and it will show up for me at some point, but, you know, it's like, I also feel like I've been coaching myself to be like, hey, maybe it'll be like a really interesting adventure on the other side of it. Like no need to be so afraid.
I get that. I don't know. There's a very relaxed attitude about that I feel like I pick up in a lot of your books, because they're like just off of reality. It's not super high fantasy where you're just like, you know, creating this entirely new set of rules for the universe. It's like, what if this one thing was a little bit different?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't like fantasy as a rule. I'm not opposed to like big world building stuff, but fantasy especially, it's just like that stuff puts me to sleep. So, yeah, I don't know. I like introducing variables that will, like, you know, let's see, you know, especially with like Crowded, you know, we're not trying to make a relevant book there, but like the more that we worked on it and the more the news cycle kept evolving, it was like, oh crap, like I don't think we're far off from some of this stuff. So yeah, I mean, but you know, this is how I guess I think about our world, is through fiction and sort of like honing in on these certain aspects and just kind of making them a bit more fun to deal with. Like I have this pitch that I'm trying to land with somebody, and it's basically all about gentrification and rent hikes in Portland. But it is a science fiction story about black holes. So like, yeah, it's just like a way for me to explore stuff that most of my writing is just like, well, this is something I can't stop thinking about. I better write a story about it. And that's how I drive it out of my head eventually.
Yeah. Going back to what you were saying about being a weird kid who really is into horror movies, do you have like your top 3 favorite horror movies, or horror movies that you feel like really are present when you're working out your ideas for your own work?
Yeah, and I've definitely I want to write more horror. Also, I'm, you know, sort of intimidated by it because I know that so much horror is just terrible. And I know that because I wade through it all to try and find like the one good horror movie or the one good horror book. I don't know. Yeah, my favorites change constantly. I mean, I'd say like right now, it's probably like John Carpenter's The Thing, that movie The Witch that came out a couple years ago.
I was going to wear my Black Phillip for President t-shirt.
You should have. You would have been very on brand for this. And then the third one, like I don't know, probably some found footage movie, but I can't decide.
Do you think The Witch, because my reading of The Witch is that they all were driven insane, like by their own kind of fears and anxieties after they were isolated in that house. But when I talked to some people, they're like, no, there was definitely a witch.
I think it's both. I mean, I feel like their isolation made them more vulnerable, and then that is how the witch like kind of eased in, was by preying on these, you know, like the father's like complete incompetence to get anything done except chopping wood. You know, eventually she uses that against him, and, you know, he gets buried under the pile of wood when Black Phillip rams him. So I think there's definitely a witch, just because I think it's super cool, I guess. I don't want that movie to just be like an allegory for, like I want, you know, and I know a lot of people like complain. They're like, yeah, I really liked it up until the very ending. And I was like, that was the best part. I was so exciting to have a movie end like that. Like I can't even like put into words how thrilling that was to see that in the theater. Like, because I loved that movie all the way. And then when that ending hit, I was like, holy shit. Like they just went for it. And I am so satisfied. just as a horror fan and like as a story fan. Like I just, I love that movie.
Usually in endings, because like that's when every horror film fails itself. Usually.
Oh yeah.
So The Witch, I agree that it to me is in my top favorites because it kind of kept moving up and up and up all the way to the end. It didn't fail itself in the last act. And
just like everything in that movie is so good. You know, the set design. Yeah. You know, the fact that they like built that house according to, you know, using these same methods that they would have built the house back.
The costumes too. I think I saw a featurette where they talked about that. Do you do that kind of research, like for Shanghai Red, where it's set in a historical period? Did you dig into a lot of like what was 1890s Portland look like and feel like?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit harder, and at a certain point, there are some subjects you do and you just research them to death to make sure you're getting it right. There's other subjects that you're like, who is going to call bullshit on this? So like for high crimes, like there were a couple moments where we're like, well, this might not be technically accurate, but the only one who's going to call us on this is somebody who has summited Mount Everest and also reads comic books. Right. So I feel like it's a very narrow Venn diagram.
You almost want to give it to that person too. Like,
oh yeah, if they called me on it, I'd be like, yeah, I would make them an award. But yeah, for Shanghai, like, you know, like I definitely tried to figure out sort of a general dress sense to give to Josh and just be like, here's kind of what we'll be dealing with. But Josh went much more in depth with all that stuff.
The art looks really beautiful.
He's so good, yeah, and he's like ridiculously young. You know, still
a lot of energy.
Got a lot of energy, and he's only going to get better as he goes. Like, you know, and this is his first like officially published book, so
that's exciting.
Yeah, and I feel like he's just going to get better and better. But he's done, you know, a lot of the visual research was all on Josh. Like I tried to help where I could, but.
How'd you
meet? You know, on Tumblr.
That's the best place.
It's
also the worst place.
I never go on Tumblr anymore. Like I know he's never, I don't know. Like I don't hate Tumblr, but I also am just like, there's only so many hours in the day, and I've already got Twitter and Facebook. Like I can't manage a third thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's like the best thing that ever happened to me on Tumblr was I ran across Josh's stuff and literally just sent him a message on Tumblr being like, if you ever want to work on something, let me know. And he wanted to, so here we are.
Like on the whole, you tend to meet very strange people, so I'm glad that in this case it was like a really good situation.
Yeah, I mostly meet strange people just out in the world. Like online, I've gotten good about, I think as a result of that, like my psychic defenses online.
Yeah.
Keep like the real weirdos away is working overtime. It's just that like I think I expend so much energy of it online, it just breaks down in the real world.
No, I have witnessed this where like a group of people are standing on the street and a weird lady will walk up and she will go to you.
Yeah. It's like I give off a pheromone or something. They're just like, oh, this dude will indulge me longer than anyone else here. And it's true. I always will, like to a certain degree. And then, you know, just because I'm just like, oh, well, this is kind of interesting. But, you know, those things never end when you're ready for them to end. So the more you indulge it, then the harder it gets to extract yourself, unless you just want to be rude and walk away. Yes. Well, there's so many of them. Like, it just happens constantly. I've just gotten used to it now. And, you know, I learned to, like, how can I speed this transaction along? Like, I know this thing's going to happen, but, like, can we not let it go past the 5-minute mark so I can, like, I can have this moment and then you can have this moment and then we can just separate? Yeah, that's always the hardest part because once it gets rolling, then it's like, oh, shit, I'm locked in.
You should do, like, a training video for people who need that skill. That seems like a very handy skill.
It's the worst skill ever. Like, I've gotten nothing from it. Just like, except, you know, my time wasted and, you know, people like offering me stuff I would never take from strangers, like drugs and stuff. Like, literally yesterday, I was walking home from the grocery store, and a dude like had my headphones on. Dude stopped me just to say like, "Hey, do you smoke weed?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Do you got a pipe?" And I was like, "I'm gonna keep going because I think you just asked if you could like smoke some of my weed, but you worded it in a way." And I was just like, "No, like I know this is not gonna go anywhere good, so I'm out." And I don't get nearly into the like levels that I used to. I mean, there was a time where when I lived in Kansas City, I would give strangers rides. It didn't happen a lot, but like the last time it happened was the one that broke me of that habit, because it was a dude who was just like, "Yeah, I just need to be run over here." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And then he was like, he asking me if I wanted to buy drugs, and I was like, "Well, I would buy some weed, I guess." And then it just turned into this odyssey. And then I was like, "Listen, I actually don't want any drugs. I just want to get you wherever you're going." Because at this point it was like 2 a.m. So I was like, "Yeah, I'm good. Like we can." And yeah, it ended with him like he was pretending to put weed in this bag that was in my back seat that had a candy bar in it. And he stole the candy bar, and he didn't put weed in there.
Oh, that
like,
fucker.
So I was like, great, I gave this asshole a ride, like, and he steals my candy bar.
And that's definitely the kind of thing where, like, if someone told me that story, I would be like, that would happen to Chris Sebela.
Yeah. I mean, I've just been lucky that, like, none of these things has gone wrong on me. Which,
we don't want you to end up on like the last podcast on the left as a grisly murder victim. Oh God, it's like, what's that movie? There's something about Mary when he picks up the hitchhiker, the 7-minute abs guy. Don't be that guy. Don't get murdered by the 7-minute abs guy.
Yeah, I've never picked up a hitchhiker. I really want to, but like I can only see that going wrong, so I always resist. But I know there will come a time in my life where I'm just not going to be able to hold out anymore.
I think we'd all like to know how your books end, and would like you to keep writing more and just generally be well and not murdered.
That's why I haven't picked up. I'm looking for the right hitchhiker. The one who screams like, "I'm totally not going to murder you."
If you're listening and you need to be given a ride somewhere, you know what to do. I
don't have a car anymore, so this is a down the road offer. But as soon as I get a car again, then look out for me, because I will give one of you a ride.
Well, it has been an absolute delight to catch up with you and chat about all of these books, and I really can't wait for Shanghai Red and Crowded to come out.
Yeah, I can send you some previews if you want to see them.
That would be awesome. And the next time you see me, also remind me to pick up a dog zine from you.
Yeah, I will. I got to get more of them printed. I think I'm going to expand it a little bit, because now I have more dog photos.
Yeah. Do you have any cats? My cat likes to go for walks on her harness. She didn't make an appearance today, but she loves to go for walks.
There are a couple cats that are in the zine. Like the all night coffee shop I used to go to, there were at least 2 occasions. Well, there was one occasion where somebody brought their cat on a leash. Mm-hmm. The cat was super not into it. And then there was another where a cat ran away from their house and wound up at the coffee shop. And I actually ended up taking them home with me.
Of course you did.
Well, it was a super affectionate cat, and it was all over me, and I was like, well, this is clearly somebody's cat. So I went on Craigslist, and I found somebody who was like, yeah, this is the cat that's missing. And I was like, this is the cat. But they didn't have a phone number, so I just emailed them. And I was like, hey, I have your cat. I guess I'm going to take them home with me, so just let me know. And then, so I was just this cat in my room. And when I woke up, he had left me a number and stuff. So,
well, you're like, reuniting the cat and his owner. That's very sweet.
Yeah, like some of the, like the weirdos who come at me are animals, and they're good, and I try to, that's the only time I've ever reunited a lost pet with their owner, but that cat appears in the zine. There's also a horse standing outside of a weed dispensary.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
So not just dogs, mostly dogs, but we do take breaks for other species.
Well, if you want to check out Chris's zines, and also he posts a lot of these pictures, where can people find you on Twitter?
I'm at xtop, XTOP.
And I assume people can also stay updated on your books when they're coming out, what's new, etc., where to buy them.
That's the best place. I mean, I have a website that I try to keep updated with my books and stuff, if nothing else. So that's just ChristopherSebela.com, but I'm also very lazy about it. So sometimes I just throw a cover up. But it's a way to occasionally see covers that nobody else has seen. So,
have I been saying your name wrong?
Yeah, but not horribly wrong.
I'm sorry. People say my name all the time.
I don't even correct people anymore. It's like, as long as you're not like completely mangling it, I just go like, I have friends who I've known for like 15 years who still mispronounce my name. So it's just like, it's what happens when you have when you have a name that isn't like when you have that many vowels in a name, it's going to throw people off. Yeah. So I just roll with it now.
Well, thank you so much for taking an hour to chat with me.
Yeah, anytime.
This was fun.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see some of this stuff.
I can hook you up.
Thank you so much. All right. I will... when will I see you? I don't know. Do you do New York Comic Con?
I don't have plans to, unless like... yeah, I mean, unless something changes.
Maybe Emerald City next year.
Emerald City, yeah. I'm keeping it like pretty low key on cons anymore. I think I'm just gonna do like Emerald City, Heroes, Rose City.
Oh, are you gonna be at Heroes?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I will see you there.
Okay, yeah,
cool.
I will totally be there.
All right. Well, until then.
Yes, it was good to chat again.
You too.
All right.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Follow us on Twitter at IRCB Podcast, and you can follow me on Twitter at Portrait of Madam X. We have a Goodreads group where we're over 300 members strong, and we have weekly threads, monthly show discussions, all kinds of stuff. Our website is ircbpodcast.com. Please rate the show, subscribe, and tell your friends. You can email the show at ircb@destroythesybe.org. Infinity Shred is the best. They do all our music. Zander is also the best. He edits the show. And of course, Mike is also the best. He's our podcast producer extraordinaire. Thank you to them. Thank you to you. Thank you to my guests. Thank you.